Welcome to Juhl Media Live Podcast. My name's Ching Juhl. I've been hosting this program since March 2020. This program has reached so many wonderful people. I have interviewed filmmakers, musicians, politicians, entrepreneurs, people in all walks of lives. Today, my special guest is Eric Abramson, who is not only a talented artist, filmmaker, he is also a firefighter. So let's welcome Eric. Hi, Eric.
Hello. Hi, Ching. Good to see you rather than just normally hear you.
Good to see you. Yeah. So Eric says hearing me is because it's not like we're on the phone all the time. We've been on Clubhouse for 3 years, right? And
Yeah.
we hear each other. And I remember the first time I actually hear you is that you have a house on Clubhouse talking about video. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it's not my house. It was started by a group of outlaws, camera guys during COVID who were sitting around too much, and they kept the room open for 24 hours a day for several months, like 5 months. And I would jumped in maybe halfway through that, and it was a great circle of people and it fairly high level discussion sometimes. So I appreciated that because sometimes there's a lot of different levels in the room, and I don't really. It's just good to get with people that have been shooting with cameras for a long time and some peers, so it was fun. And we've kind of fell off, and I've been trying to bring it back a bit on Wednesday nights when I can. It's a good opportunity to hang and see how a couple of people that are sort of virtual friends are doing out there, and people are getting back to work mostly. So yeah,
Wednesday night, is it 9 o'clock Eastern time?
Yes, 9:30 Eastern time we've been doing.
Okay. Yeah.
Generally Wednesday evenings. It's a lounge, so we don't have a lot of structure. There's definitely some good heckling amongst some people, but it's mostly if you have a serious question, we can try to get it answered. If you have a ridiculous question, we might try to get it answered. It doesn't really matter. I kind of see it as a filmmaker's lounge, like you'd find at a film festival.
Yeah, that's awesome. And looking back, I remember it was my very early career of getting on Clubhouse, and I went to you and your friend's room, and I was like very insecure and asked some questions. And one moment, someone sort of like just woke me up, says, "Hey, you have something, you should tell people what you have." It's very interesting because I was just so shy. I'm not really a shy person, but I was intimidated by you guys, and mostly our gentlemen in the room. So but I learned
Mm.
so much from you, and then eventually you have been very supportive to my room, which is a smartphone video production, right?
Yeah, well, I've been learning a lot, and as you know, we'll talk more about the Forest Service side of what I do. Using the smartphone's been great for me. It's a great tool. I'm using it right now to do this with you, right? And so it does. I love my bigger cameras, but sometimes, man, you just get in the little car and zip, and I really dig that I can build a decent camera and collect decent imagery and pretty good sound in the field. So, yeah, it's been a learning experience for me too, to hear from people that are, doing social media and stuff that I don't really mess with that much. So, yeah, it's a good group. I'm surprised I've been able to hang in there. For some reason, Friday afternoons have been pretty chill the last couple months. So that's good.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, you've been a great
Yeah.
supporter and also, yeah, and contributor as well. Now, Eric, you are a person with a lot of talent. You're a musician, you're a videographer, you're a producer, you're also a firefighter. So let's talk about first. As first is like where are your like a filming and videographer skill developed and came from?
Oh, how did I start? Well, that starts actually in New York City. My uncle was a professional photographer in the 70s and 80s in New York, mostly in the Village. He eventually moved out to the Brooklyn area, and he taught me how to work in a dark room. And he taught me about taking black and white portraits, mostly some color, but mostly black and white work in both 35 and medium format. But the thing Michael really taught me was how to be around famous people. like how to keep your cool, be a professional, be friendly, be comforting. But, he taught me how to do that in the beginning of my career. And that's something I really learned just watching him work mostly. And so that was a valuable thing that served me well as I've moved on. And in college, I got a little more serious about my studies. I studied journalism, got some film classes and some additional education around that. And um, got involved in sports a lot because that's what Boulder was doing, is climbing, mountain biking, skiing. That's what people do here. That's their hobbies. And so it's a very active community. And so we were making films that way, some for corporate, some not. But I got involved in mountain bike racing. And mountain biking was kind of new. It had been around, but the pro sport of racing was really growing very quickly. And I kind of got in that ride, and we ended up making a TV show that ended up being internationally distributed. So it was pretty successful in my eyes. We made a bunch of shows over, I think, 4 seasons. We had a home video series that we distributed, and it did pretty well. And we were like kind of the cool program in the culture of the sport, and that gave us a lot of cred. And so I went on to shoot more sports, but I kind of drifted away from that as I got more into music. And so shot as part of a crew. I'd work on concert films and music videos as an assistant, slowly moving my way back up to be a operator, DP. And I started directing as well, and I directed that mountain bike series first on, so I kind of kept circling back, and it didn't really hold up my camera career, but it just made it a little wider scope of skills. And so now I find myself as a director and a camera operator or DP. Those are my stronger skills, but I've also along the way acquired a lot of audio post-production skills. Been in on a lot of records being made, and that process, I've had the time, even when I was shooting, to really get an understanding and be a part of making that happen. And it's a super cool process. And so I feel honored it's helped my filmmaking as well. I kind of can handle my post production. And when I have to communicate with somebody else doing post, I'm not handing them a big, difficult pile of material. They kind of understand what we're going for. Like we can communicate on a good level. So I appreciate that experience through my professional career.
When you do mountain biking, the show, and in those days, that's pretty early, right? Like how technically, how does
It
that
was brutal.
go
We had a
reach?
couple. We had some film cameras. We had a big ENG video camera. We had an early camcorder, but it came along. I mean, I think that's an easier task now to do a show like that. But we got out there where other people didn't. Even the big ESPN would come and do race coverage with a bunch of people, but they didn't really know where to be. They didn't know the gnarly spots on the course. They didn't have the relationships with the crew and the racers to get access. Like people trusted us. We were kind of like the NFL films a bit of the sport in the early days. It was called Fat Tire Journal. My old partner, he has put some stuff up on YouTube, but there's not that much up there. But yeah, it was a fun time. Really, I learned how to do everything. I mean, we were both shooting. I was doing all the offline editing, and we were just starting to use computers. So I had to learn D-Vision, then Avid, and then I got into Media 100, and then eventually Final Cut. And so it made me do all those steps, and I had to go we produce music for the show, because at that time it was cheaper to do that than license music. Not like now where we have the stuff online where you can do free music or Creative Commons or just affordable licensing for music. It was a much more difficult process. So it was cool to learn and have these all these things have to come together on a deadline, because our show went once a month. We put a new show on, so there was a very obvious day that we had to deliver a tape to them, otherwise we were in big trouble.
Where was
So it
the
was good.
platform? Where was the platform you
Well, we
developed?
distributed in the country at that time. It was called Prime Sports Network, which was a collection of regional cable sports channels that eventually became Fox Sports after we were done. But
Hmm.
they had like a hub in Texas. They had the West Coast. So it was a national thing. But for us, it was the international distribution that made the bigger difference. We
Hmm.
worked with Gary R. Benz, who's still in business, I think. And he really sold quite a bit of our content all over Europe, because there wasn't much about like what the sport was about. And it was kind of an American sport, like Europeans have succeeded in the sport, but kind of came up in the hills of Colorado and California. You know, and so it definitely was, people had their eyes on what was going on here first. And so it was cool to be part of that culture early on.
So when you
Yeah.
shoot a moving bike, there must be some kind of vehicle either before in the front or after, right? Because how
Sometimes you're
how
on the
do you,
side of the trail, you know, I
mm,
mean,
right, right.
those are, could be really dramatic, you know, using the forest as part of your setting, and you can see how steep it is. And,
Hmm.
but I've also followed all kinds of vehicles with an ATV with a Steadicam arm, you know,
Mm,
motorcycles as well. And
right.
we've done that in fire as well. We've shot that way. So yeah, I mean,
Awesome.
there's a lot of ways to approach shooting anything. It's just like shooting a wild animal. You know, you can either be in the back of the Land Rover hanging it out in Africa, or you can be on a long lens in a blind. You know, and those are
Mm.
both amazing shots to get.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about your videoing music concerts, and yeah, what are the
Uh,
huge differences between filming music and filming sports and other.
yeah, the outdoor
Mm,
sports thing.
yeah.
Well, um, let's see. How are well, at first, I would say there's very similar in a couple ways. One is that things are happening and you have to capture them, right? Like a performance is going to happen, and a sporting event like a mountain bike race or a skiing race is going to happen. So it's not like you go, whoa, whoa, everybody stop. We got to do something. You know, you have to capture it. So maybe that's why I like both of them. I love music. It's part of my soul and my life, probably like you as well. Maybe different genres sometimes, but you know, music stirs people and inspires people. So that's a big part of it. It all really it started with my uncle. He would photograph several musicians. So I learned to be comfortable in the same way. Like I could be around someone who I really admired their records, and my inclination as a kid might be to be like, "Oh, will you autograph this for me?" And you know, don't do that stuff. You know, you're just a pro, and that was more gratifying in the end. But the music thing really starts for me. I kind of got kidnapped. The mountain bike show we were talking about was kind of falling apart. The partnership got rough, and mistakes were made. It's a long story that no one really needs to know, but me and my partner had parted ways just when things were kind of really taking off and doing well. And at the time, I was living at a big ranch near here in the mountains with a couple guys from this band, Leftover Salmon, that were brand new. But they had decided to rent this big place, and it was a big ranch, and kind of have a rehearsal area, and you know, just a place to hang out with a bunch of people. So it was fun. You know, we had a good spot, and I rented one of the rooms in the back of the lodge. And one day when my deal was going totally south on Fat Tire Journal, the only guy that was at the lodge was this lead singer, Vince Herman, who we were pretty good friends. He's a great improvisationalist on stage. He's a hell of a musician and a songwriter. Anyway, we were friends, and he came in and knocked on my door and said, "Hey, man, you all right?" And I said, "No, not really." And he goes, "Well, what are you doing the next 5 months?" And I said, "I have no idea." And he said, "I do." And so I ended up getting on the bus with these guys as they were doing their first tours to the West Coast, and maybe they'd been on the East Coast once or twice. So it was a super adventure. And as I was shooting, I was still working freelance. I was doing some stuff with MTV at the time. I had a bunch of what we called short ends, which were short pieces of leftover film. And I would take those on the road. And so I collected a massive footage on the band for their first 15 years of the band. And we eventually made a documentary about that. But they're still really good friends. I'm catching up with them next week in Kentucky on a project that Vince, the lead singer, has been working on, and I have with the Bluegrass Museum and Hall of Fame down there. So they have a really cool exhibit starting called Jerry Garcia's Bluegrass Journey, and it opens next week. So I'm part of that project. It was really fun to introduce some interviews for it.
Yeah. So how do you solve the issue of audio when you go filming music concert?
Well, you know, if we're doing a big show, then we've advanced the show with both the band's crew and the house crew. You know, that's a big part of like any shoot. Prep is important in communication. And so generally, if there's a lot on the line, like we're bringing a lot of cameras in, then we'll probably have a recording crew as well, which is one or two people, and they'll get a split from the stage. We'll let the house record too, because sometimes they'll get a nice mix, but most of the big venues are kind of wired to do that already. So, you know, like we'll hire somebody in town. That one guy in particular I usually use if I need that capability, and he'll set up backstage with a rack of gear. You know, he doesn't. It's, you know, one or two people can handle it. He patches in, he gets all the channels working, and then he records it all for us. Um, but sometimes it's the house, you know, you can depend on the house if you communicate ahead of time and they're like, oh, yeah, we can give you a nice stereo mix and it's not perfect, but it's a decent mix of the house. I always tell people, though, make sure if you can is capture the room itself with some microphones. Because if you just take a feed from a board, especially with rock and roll, you're going to get a pretty dry, you may get a very dry mix or a very wet mix, but you won't hear the audience per se. And so I always, a really good, anyone who really cares about doing a live recording is going to have some audience mics out in the house to give you some natural ambience. You can fake it, but I think it's better to get the real thing.
Great, great input. And now, as earlier, I mentioned that you're a firefighter. And when did you start to work in that sector? How did that happen?
In high school, I started working and hiking in this area in New Hampshire called the White Mountains. And up there is a organization called the Appalachian Mountain Club. And they maintain a bunch of huts, some shelters, a big lodge down in the valley below Mount Washington. And they have a pretty storied and historic search and rescue program, which I got involved in when I worked there for a couple summers and was up there in the winter as well. So that's where I started. Before that, my grandfather was involved in the Newark Fire Department, just outside of New York City in Newark, New Jersey, as a younger man. So he had always instilled in me fire service is something you can do. I wasn't particularly leaning towards the military, so it seemed like a good choice, and that's what I got involved in when I moved out to Colorado. I eventually ended up in this town in Nederland and joined the volunteer department here. And that was, boy, almost 30 years ago now, 27 years ago. It's a community service is how I see it. It's been incredibly gratifying. But in the course of doing that, I worked for, I think, 4 seasons with the U.S. Forest Service on an engine crew and a hand crew. And I got a lot of experience and training there. And when I left that, a program started a couple years later where I could actually still go out on federal and non-federal equipment and go be on some bigger fires. And I continue to do that to this day. So I'm sort of a hybrid. I'm a volunteer in my town, but I go out and work on mostly larger incidents as part of a larger team of management. They call it IMTs, incident management team. So I'm a member of that.
That's very commendable. Yeah. So what are the have you run into a really dangerous situation that like a life or death threatening to yourself?
Well, before I answer to myself, I did want to mention the reason I never intended to be a paid wildland firefighter. I was pretty happy just serving on my little town. And I was in LA, and I actually taken an extended period of time there to try to get some stuff going. And it kind of failed. It didn't go the way I thought. So I came home for a break. And the Forest Service in town, they called me, the guys that worked up there, and said, hey, man, they need help at the tanker base. You come from aviation, you know, your dad was in the Air Force. I'm like, yeah, that sounds cool. I'll go do that for a few weeks. And so I started working down there that summer. We had a huge fire to the south of us, and we were filling planes and just going gangbusters for weeks. And then one of the crews, which I was getting to know the guys, sadly, they crashed one afternoon. They lost their wing and crashed. And that was the first time it really hit home to me that, yes, indeed, what fighting fire is a life and death situation. These two pilots lost their lives trying to save strangers' homes and the forest. That's a hero, you know, someone who puts it all on the line. And it kind of made me back off from the film world for a couple of years. I was still working on that project about the band, but not really heartedly. I was kind of like over it. I'm like, why? What am I doing in Hollywood when Rick and Milt are fucking, their lives are, excuse my language, their lives are, being laid on the line literally. A
Mm.
week later, we lost our helicopter pilot, who was a local pilot that fought fire on the same site. He was putting out the fire from the aircraft. And so it was a pretty big change of pace. And so to really answer your question about dangerous situations, I have seen some dangerous situations, both a little bit with structures involved, but yeah, I've been in some spots where I was quite nervous, but you know, part of our training is to recognize that and reduce risk where we can. So yeah, I've definitely seen some dangerous stuff, and I'm glad that it didn't get any more dangerous. And you know, I've lost quite a few friends besides Rick and Milt over the years. We do lose people every year, and so there's a lot on the line. There's a lot of expectation, and I hope one day the government will decide to pay our firefighters, especially our full-time guys, a little more than they are now, because you'd be surprised how little some of these guys make and how hard they work, and gals too, you know.
Now, you are a videographer and filmmaker, and you're in the situation not very many people are have around, being a firefighter in a dangerous zone and seeing, the accident happens or wildfire. Do you shoot while you go on assignment? Are you allowed to shoot?
Well, when I was on the engine and when I was, you know, a hand crew as a member of those crews, like lower on, no, that I never would take pictures. That wasn't my job, right? You know, as a leader on an engine, I now, especially with smartphones, we do allow some temperament of taking some photos when it's appropriate. But I warn people all the time, man, you don't want to be in a dangerous spot to get a picture and die. And, you know, like it can happen. People have had branches come down really close to them while they're taking a picture when they probably shouldn't. That all being said, about 5 years ago, I acquired a position on the fires called Public Information Officer, and there's different levels of it. Currently, I'm a 3, which doesn't mean much to you, but the Public Information Office does a lot of interesting stuff. One is they set up public meetings in the communities. They inform the communities regularly about information on the fire. They do social media. Well, there's a hunger on the front side of that for pictures and video. So I get to kind of combine my careers, and I get to be out on the fire, and my job is to document. Now, I have to be extra careful and extra aware, and we often work in teams because of it. I mean, I do work solo sometimes, but if I'm working solo, I'm with a crew. So someone's watching my back essentially, you know, and I do the same for other people. So now my job is to go capture that, and I find it interesting because I have to remind myself some days when I'm out on the fire line that, oh, I can go take pictures of the fire instead of making sure it's not spotting over us, or you know, making sure the air, you know, whatever task we have in the field.
I really respect you and your passion for helping people and to be a firefighter. And now I've seen this incredible film a few years ago called Cove, and I had
Mhm.
no idea you were part of the filmmaking. Cove is a film. Why don't you tell us what is a Cove about?
Well, the Cove is a story about Rick O'Barry, who was the trainer of the very first dolphins that appeared on television in the form of a TV show called Flipper. He had figured out how to train dolphins. And at first it seemed pretty innocent, but as he got deeper into the show, he realized that the dolphins were in these tanks, they weren't healthy. We're making these intelligent creatures that are really probably on par and in some ways may exceed us in intelligence to do tricks for us. And he started to understand what he had created. He became an activist and began to fight this whole idea of like what we call dolphinariums or dolphin entertainment. You know, whales like orcas are also involved in this. And so my friend Luis Sohoyos, who was a National Geo still photographer in Boulder, decided he wanted to make a film. He'd never done one before, and he got a crew together. And eventually, I ended up on that crew, and we ended up in Japan and amongst other locations around the world, and in our backyard, and made a pretty astounding documentary about where the source of some of these dolphins is from. And it's a pretty brutal capture process that happens in rural Japan. So we had to infiltrate a small fishing village and capture as much footage of what was going on as we could, and then try to get the Japanese government to change their ways a bit. And it's a pretty compelling film. It isn't a typical documentary, which I'm pretty proud of the way the edit came together. And I say this about that film: there were so many cogs in the wheel that came together. to make that film happen. I still can't believe I was part of that, but I was. And there was this amazing team all the way through post-production, all the way through the festivals. Like, people just came at the right time and contributed what they could. And it was very powerful. I hope to see that again, that level of sort of synchronicity maybe, or, group effort. And if I don't, I'm okay with it, because it was that outstanding, and it was dangerous and crazy. And I can't believe nobody got hurt or arrested or worse, and we definitely disrupted an industry that was kind of doing their own thing in Japan, and they're a little more watched now, but it still goes on. People go to SeaWorld, and that if, as long as they go to, the dolphin park in Dubai, they're going to have this ability to sell. It's just, really like illegal drugs, as long as there's a hunger because it's illegal or whatever, or there's no treatment available, there's always going to be a need. There's always going to be a smuggler. I think it's kind of the same thing. And so, yeah, it was an amazing movie. I don't want to talk too much about it. I've told you a lot, but it's definitely worth watching. It, if you're familiar with the work of Joseph Campbell, the hero's journey, which is a really kind of an epic idea of how stories are told, this is a documentary that shows that documentaries can fold into that formula as well. And there, from an academic standpoint, I think it's important. And it was amazing the reception it got. It won 70 something festival awards, major festivals included, some small ones, but it also won the Oscar in 2010, March of 2010, for a documentary feature. So it was an insane ride. I feel honored to be a part of that team, and I could take credit for so little of it, but it really was the synergistic aspect of the whole crew, the way people came at the right times and gave what they could to the effort. It really paid off. I'm super impressed by that, and I had very little to do with it. I'm glad they called me.
Well, that's wonderful. And I was let me play us a trailer actually. And when you go type on the cover on Google, actually there's a lot of information, and you can also see the entire film.
Oh, good, you found it. So,
I
we're going to show
it.
We're showing a clip.
Let's play the trailer. How's that? Yeah, because this is like 4 different kind of trailers.
There's a lot of trailers over the course of it.
Yeah, this is one of them. You think it's good?
Yeah, they're all good.
Yeah.
I do want to say that we try to do the story legally. I thought of all the possibilities of what could happen, and it kept me up at night.
Okay, Eric, I think I clicked the wrong one. I clicked the whole movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
I don't know.
Sorry. I apologize. I'll do it again. Okay.
That one had all the vanity cards, so yeah, I've never seen that version of it.
There's so much intro. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, that's definitely not the whole movie, I don't think.
Oh, really?
But whatever. Yeah, play what you.
Oh.
No, I don't think so. How long was it?
That was 1 hour something.
Oh, maybe it was then. I don't know. I haven't really seen the film myself in a couple of years.
Okay. Here's the trailer. Okay.
All right. There's a preview.
I'm gonna mute. Yeah, I'm gonna mute you. Okay. Sorry.
But I do want to say that we try to do the story legally.
There it is. A little town with a really big secret. It's so bizarre what's going on over here.
When we first got in the country, we had no idea who was following us.
Do you think they know we're here?
We didn't know if it was the whalers, the Japanese mafia.
Somebody's behind me. I don't know who that is.
They don't like me. They don't like my message.
Rick is world famous for his work with dolphins.
I feel somewhat responsible because it was the Flipper TV series that created this multi-billion-dollar industry. The dolphin smile is nature's greatest deception. It creates the illusion they're always happy.
You realize after a while they don't really belong in captivity.
I'd never seen so many dolphins before.
The Japanese people don't even know about it.
They take the boats around to the secret cove that nobody could see.
They're afraid of cameras. They said if the world finds out what goes on here, we'll be shut down.
They were hiding something.
We need to get in there and film exactly what happens. We need to know the truth.
We needed people with a special set of skills to implement this mission.
They're behind me.
Let's go.
Good luck.
Underwater camera is set.
They're not being told that the free lunch meat that their children are getting are contaminated.
Let it not be said that you didn't know about it. You know about it.
If we can't fix that, there's no hope.
It is flashlight. Guards are moving.
Get out of there. Get out of there now.
Nice.
Well,
Yeah, great.
it's a powerful movie. Like I said, so many people were part of that team that really brought their A game. Yeah, amazing. It's still emotional for me. I think about it. It pulls me right back to it, you know?
And now you're exposed to the world of this illegal activity, and also they're trying to in their own country, right? So how do you guys like conquer that you don't want to be arrested, but you want to capture, and you don't want to offend people too obviously? And so tell us a little bit more stories about that.
Well, I thought about it quite a bit when I first was offered the potential to go, you know, and I thought about, what are we doing going over there and calling this out? And as I started to learn more about the subject, I started to understand what was happening. And a couple of things that made me okay with it. Number one, they were force feeding their kids in school, basically mismarked whale meat that was dolphin meat. That's poisonous. So you're killing your children. The disease that you get from eating too much mercury or consuming or being exposed to too much mercury is called Minamata disease. It comes from Japan. So Japan should know what happens to their population. That was a big one for me. And the second is the treatment of a dolphin. I've grown up seeing dolphins in the wild on the Atlantic Ocean my whole life, not in mass like that. Every once in a while you'd see a big pod, but the way of the treatment. The third thing was a labor issue. Like, there's a claim that, people used to do this, it's history. Well, that's not true at all. Whaling is a tradition in this part of Japan for sure. But it was more about going and getting a whale that would keep the whole village alive for the winter, not a mass whaling corporation, or the only person that might eat a dolphin would be maybe someone who was kicked out of town, someone who was bad. But it's highly toxic now. And so those were kind of the three things. And so what was happening was that the Yakuza were taking advantage of these local fishermen who were kind of desperate because they've overfished their area. And I hate to break it to them, the dolphins are not the reason that there's no fish in the bays around Taiji. It's because it's been overfished commercially, and there's no controls on they haven't had controls of, the stock. So it's gone south. They blame the dolphin, and then the Yakuza comes and says, okay, well, we're going to pay you to catch all these dolphins, but we're going to make all the real money by taking the females and training them and selling them for usually $200,000 to $400,000 an animal. So there's a lot of money on the line, and it's a very deceitful business. And so all that going on made it possible for me to be okay with calling them on it. The other thing that was interesting about not getting arrested was as our folks started to research where this cove was, it's all fenced off and it says illegal. Well, it isn't. It's kind of one of the, maybe not the downfall. I love the Japanese culture. I think it's important for me to say that. I have great respect for it. My grandmother traveled there in the early 70s. She taught me about Japan then. I practiced a rough form of Buddhism myself. I revere the Japanese people as a whole. They are very courteous, and I think the reason they can all get along on their island is they're very obedient. They don't really challenge the norm. Americans challenge the norm, if you can make a generalization, right? Well, the downfall of that in this little town is that the Wakuza just fence off an area which should be open all year round to the public. It's part of a national park, is closed down so they can slaughter the dolphins. So technically, we weren't really breaking the law being in there. They would use intimidation to try to convince people of that. But, the Japanese just, they accept the signs. They go to a different cove, where this is a place that they should be able to access all year round. But about half the year, the water turns red, and it's pretty brutal. And so all of those things are the answer that said, you know what, I'm okay with this. And if I could get, I do eat meat. I'm an omnivore. I definitely eat less raw fish than I used to after the film, but I still occasionally eat it. But yeah, that's something I wrestled with the whole project for sure. The idea that, how dare the guy Jim, the foreigner, come in here with his cattle farms in Texas telling me how to eat. But what they're doing is not for food. It's not for sustenance. It's poisonous. So that's a long answer, but it's a great question because it's something that people don't think about, that a lot of us thought about that and talked about it as we were getting ready to go. I remember a long conversation on the airplane with two of the younger guys who were kind of our assistant editors who went on the trip. And we got into a long talk about that on the aircraft for 2 or 3 hours about the philosophy of what we were doing. So yeah, great question, Ching. Excellent.
Oh, thank you. So this is a documentary, right? And before you went, there's a lot of details you probably don't know, right? I mean, how in terms of a shot list, like how does the director know what shot list to build, or you just like see what you see and what you just improvisation or kind of a shooting? How does that go?
Well, you got to remember at the time, Luis Sohoyos had never made a film. He was a still photographer. So he kind of communicated the way I would with a fellow photographer or camera person. He was like, I want the shots to be beautiful when they can be, to be the contrast to this nasty subject. Because, dolphin slaughter is not exactly a pleasant topic, right? Mm-hmm. So he was very, at least in my interactions with him, were about, like trying to find nice light, try to find something that is, that has some irony to it, like a small, beautiful family enjoying whale meat, or, whatever it is, And so I was kind of left to go get shots. He trusted the people he hired to do whatever it was, whether it was Simon, who came from the British Marines, doing like rigs and making sure we were safe, to, Brooke, who was the main cameraman, myself, other people with cameras. Like he kind of let people do their thing. Now, when we were shooting together, like shooting an interview, he was very particular about the lighting. But most of the time, once I got his style, we pretty much nailed what we needed to anywhere we went. So yeah, no, he was there was definitely times where it was running guns an understatement. It was a little bit gonzo. Like some of the stuff we did was crazy, but that's kind of what it took to get power through it. And so, yeah, we were all learning together too, like there were definitely things that we didn't anticipate. There were amazing things that happened that worked out, like, yeah, like I said, it had this, everyone was so committed that Margaret Mead quote, when everyone is committed fully, then miraculous things happen. I'm really butchering her concept, but that's what happened there, So he was very trusting. I think like an editor, because I've edited my own work all through my career. I knew what he needed. I knew what that editor needed from the different situations that we were in, and I did my best to get it. Sometimes I succeeded, sometimes I failed, but most of the time I got what they needed on my trips there. So,
So
you know,
is the film, hold on, I have a little less signal of my Wi-Fi. So is the film made any impact, like to expose this issue to the world?
yeah,
Did
well, it definitely a lot of exposure. It reduced the dolphin slaughter by 10, almost 20 fold. So my understanding is they've been getting a couple hundred animals a year, and out of that, they're still, grabbing dolphins for show, but not as much. I think the tide has turned on these kind of entertainment places, just like hopefully the Lions in Rome, where, we'll look back and go, what did we do to the orca, the mighty orca and the dolphin to make them do tricks for us? And it's very unhealthy. There's another film that was made after ours called Blackfish that I also recommend. It's about the orca program at SeaWorld. And I know SeaWorld stock is in the tank, so that's doesn't make me sad at all. They're exploitative, like I'm not too into circuses really either. But plus the dolphin particularly and the orca, I think too, to see those animals in the wild, you understand what they really are, and what they're like. And the behavior that you see at a dolphinarium or even at a resort where you get to swim with a dolphin is not really normal dolphin behavior. But as the trailer says, the dolphin smiles naturally. And so it's one of the greatest, betrayals in nature. Like, I really recommend people do not go to swim with dolphins either. They're usually drugged or just not healthy animals. When you see them out in the wild, it's very impressive and it's beautiful to watch, and they will interact, but it's a different thing.
That's good to know. Good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now the film, can you tell us a little bit how the process for a film to get into nominated by Oscar and eventually
Oh,
win? You have some fun stories.
yeah, I don't, I know a little about that. I mean, you saw those vanity cards in the trailer, right? Participant media, and, road show. These guys are the ones that made all that happen. And I know they spent a lot of money to do it. But it was fun to go. I ended up, we got to go to some great stuff. Louis rented a whole house for us at Sundance when we premiered there. And that we made a huge presence at the festival, of course. But it was just a blast to be like rock starred there, like I never thought that would happen. And like I said, if it happens again, I'll be stoked. I'll know what it's like. But if it doesn't, I'm okay with it too, It was really fun. And same with a bunch of us showed up in Hollywood for the Oscar week, and that was exciting. We actually did an undercover operation and shut down a restaurant that was serving illegal whale meat during the week that we were there in Hollywood. So we were kind of bad boys, man. We came into town, well, bad girls too. We came into town, we went to all these parties, and then we shut down a restaurant and got the hell out of there. So now I'm proud of the crew. They stuck to their guns on this project as things were happening during the week. It was fun to be there. I was ready to. It's not my, when to rewind a little, before I became a wildland firefighter and I was still working in LA a lot. I was just becoming disillusioned a lot, and those kind of things just reinvigorated a little. Like it was fun to go into Hollywood and be like, oh wow, this is what it's like when they like your stuff, But most of the time, I'm just a small puppy that comes to town, and they're happy I don't piss on their rug when I leave.
That's awesome. Yeah. So if you guys wanted to watch The Cove, just Google it. It's everywhere, and you can
get
watch
some tissues.
it.
Maybe don't eat sushi before or during or for a while after. That may change your mind a little.
Yeah.
But honestly, the way the film is cut, it builds up to a very, very brutal slaughter. But even within that sequence at the end of the film, it's like Hitchcock. Your mind plays tricks on you a bit, and it was done that way with purpose. So it is brutal to watch the last few minutes of the film, but I think it's worth seeing. The story of Rick O'Barry, the trainer, is just, like I said earlier, he's the hero of this story, and it's amazing to watch someone who's committed as an activist, but not really because he's just committed. It's because what he did early on created the entire thing. You know, so he's slaying the monster he created, which I find to be such a, I mean, I lose the words a little, you know?
Yeah, I understand. Right. So, what are you busy these days in terms of film work?
Well, typically this time of year is a little slower for me. You know, I definitely am out in the fall fighting fire on those bigger fires, like I mentioned, and we're out doing that and not documenting fire being fought, I should say too. Um, I pick up some projects, and I have to admit, like we are seeing a lot less of the lower end, lower production, smaller production streaming. It's really kind of rolled off. You know, during COVID and towards the end of COVID, it was very popular, and I've been doing that since really streaming was called streaming. I worked for a company called iClips, and then I guess that was mid 2000s. We did a bunch of festivals, concerts, and they were a little early, I think. And you know, it's always hard to be the first one out of the gate, but there are some people still doing it. But that's usually something I'm working on this time of year. Like I'm doing 1 or 2 shows, but we really haven't seen the same volume. I think, you know, people are going back to buying tickets, and I'm okay with that. And so I've been developing a project of mine that I've wanted to do for a few years that's scripted. So that's a little outside of my realm, and I won't talk much about that yet. But it's a scripted series is really how I would phrase it. And yeah, it has a little bit of adventure, a little bit of outlaw, little cat and mouse. And so I think it has some good universal themes, and we'll see how it goes. It's an uncharted territory for me. It's an area I wanted to be in most of my career, and I never really, for whatever reason, ended up there. So I'm going to circle back and see if we can make it work. So that I've been busy doing a little of that. And, you know, the fire department in town keeps me busy as a volunteer still. You know, I definitely respond multiple times a week, and I'm surprised we haven't been interrupted on this interview with my pager going off, but you know, I'm not going to interrupt the interview, but you know what I mean? So that I do that, but traditionally winter's slow, and now as spring is starting to show up, start getting busier. But you know, some years like the year before this, I had 2 pretty major projects with the New Zealand production companies. So those kept me busy over the course of about 2 months last spring. And so it goes up and down, you know, and luckily and unluckily, I kind of know that I'm going to be working a certain amount on big fires generally every year. And so it's nice to relax. I don't take every project that comes my way sometimes. I say no more now than I used to.
Yeah, very good, very good. And I was wondering that when we hang out together on Clubhouse, and first is the videographer room, and now you hang out with us a lot on the smartphone, and you're a I guess DP or cameraman. You use big cameras now. So how do you utilize a smartphone in your work?
Well, like everybody, you know, the first thing is that everybody's got a phone, right? So nobody cares. Like I can, unless I'm in a secure environment somewhere, which is pretty rare, nobody cares if there's a smartphone out. As you know, you can walk down the streets of New York, no one freaking cares. Maybe someone might say to you, "Hey, I don't want to be on camera," you know, maybe, but really not that often, right? And so that's the number one thing, that it because it's a decent imaging system now, that I can get some pictures where people barely know I'm doing it, which is always the most natural. But they don't get all tense. You know, when the big camera comes out, sometimes they get a little bit like, oh shit. Now, luckily in firefighting, you know, there's a lot of women but there's also a lot of dudes. And these women and these dudes, they like tools, right? We like big airplanes and big helicopters and big saws. And so certain crews, when the big camera comes out, they know I'm serious, right? So it's kind of inverse the normal public. Sometimes I found that, like with the Hot Shot crew this year, I did some interviews with those guys, and the minute the big camera came out, they were like, "Whoa, what's that?" Like, you know, so they were super supportive. They knew that we were doing something a little more serious. But I love the phone because like I said, you can capture decent imagery. We don't have to. I'm not shooting footage when I'm out with the feds to be on a film, you know, a big documentary. Maybe one day, but that's not the intent. The intent is to communicate to the public in a timely, quick fashion, right? And the phone really allows that. You know, I barely have to connect a cable. I can get all the footage off into an editing environment. I can spit that stuff out. As you know, you can spit stuff out direct right from your phone. We're going live right now, you know, so we have all those capabilities within the phone, and it's a powerful era to tell stories. You know, it also makes it harder to make a living for sure. Like, people that have been doing it a while are used to bigger budgets. Those budgets don't exist. So it waters it down, but it also equalizes it. It allows everybody's voice to be heard. And so I'll take the latter myself. You know, I know people that don't. They're like, damn, you know, I lost my gig because of the smartphone. So
Yeah.
I think you just have to ride it and transfer with the times. And there's still a need for decent production level work, you know, and you know, I'm pretty proud of the work I do. It's not as much as I'd like sometimes, but that's all right. You know, I have a lot of free time and time in the woods and things that people give up. You know, my dearest friends that are in LA, some of them are doing incredible work, truly, like really high quality, very successful, you know, network, big studios, but their lives are pretty, you know, there's a lot of driving, there's a lot of traffic, there's the pressure of, you know, the social life is different. Like, I don't know, man. I don't know if those things are worth all that. So I made my decision.
You enjoy where you are.
I do, for the most part. You know, it can be a little isolating, but I've come to enjoy that too. You know, like I don't mind that I get a couple months off here in the winter where I don't have to deal with a lot of people. Because, you know, when we're out on a fire, I could be dealing with hundreds of people at the same time, a big public meeting. I have to put a public face forward when we're out doing what we call trap line, where we're putting up information in different places. We're interacting with town members and the public and tourists, and, you know, you have to make sure these people know where they're going. And so there's a lot of energy involved in that. So I don't mind shutting down for a few months either. So yeah, it's beautiful where I live, you know.
Yeah, I can visualize last week you had like 3 or 5 inches of snow.
Yeah, 51 inches at my house. So that's what, 4 feet.
Inch. Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's a
129 centimeters for those in the international realm.
Wow.
So,
wow.
Yeah, it was a lot of snow.
Did you take some pictures?
I took a few. I made a little gallery. I think you saw it online, but honestly, we were so busy just trying to get the fire department dug out first. And then, you know, the roads department is working on the roads. It took multiple days to get everybody pretty much dug out. Excuse me.
Oh.
I know there's still probably a few people that haven't gotten there yet, but they've been snowshoeing out and their neighbors help them. Like, it's one thing I like about up here. It's definitely changed. There's a lot more expensive homes, second homes, but overall, like, all the neighbors kind of step up and help each other still. You know, that's a big change too. Like, when I lived in LA, the neighbors on either side of the house I lived in had never met, and they both lived there over 20 years. And I found that to be so weird, you know, like, you don't have to like your neighbors, but you should at least know them and know who they are. And I'm lucky most of my neighbors are pretty cool, and we all kind of help each other get the road plowed now. And so, yeah, you know, I think those things have a lot of value, you know.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So Eric, would you like to do a rapid fire before you
Sure.
go?
All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
We haven't done it for a while. Yeah. All right. So thank you. First of all, thank you so much for being here with me and to shed your light and your knowledge and your insight. Thank
my
you so
pleasure.
much. Yeah.
The people I learned from kind of made me promise that I would pass it on. So I feel like I got to stick to that, and I kind of hold my younger crew that I work with to that as well. So yeah, happy to share.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks for your platform to do that with too. It's been fun. It's been fun to learn.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, and this has been like, I think more than 267 episodes, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to say thank you for our audience who's listening to us, and also people made comment on here, and Sharkfin. Sharkfin said we want to see Eric's version of Ladder 49 or Backdraft, he said. Anyway,
Yeah,
do you have
maybe
a
one day.
yeah,
We've talked about it. I mean,
yeah,
I tend to want to tell the real stories more. You know,
uh,
they're more compelling in a lot of ways. You
yeah.
know, but I get I get why people love shows like Fire Country, and the Wildland Arena hasn't been as well represented. So we'll see how that goes in the future. It's not an easy thing to pull off. I guess it's easier now with digital and effects and such, but even the most expensive fire effects don't really look real, and they tend to muddy it up in Hollywood. So
Mm.
challenge accepted. I'm thinking about it. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of thought goes into it.
I think Eric, your friend Mitch
Oh,
Corasi.
Mitch Corsell, yeah.
Also,
So
yeah,
Mitch, real quick story. At the very end of the Fat Tire Journal, the mountain bike show,
yeah.
through a weird series of events, a bunch of us ended up going to India to play bicycle polo that we used to play in Boulder. And Mitch was with us on that trip. So, hey, Mitch, I haven't
Hi,
seen
Mitch.
or talked to him in a while.
Nice to be with us. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Mitch, you have to listen to replay, okay? You're late.
Oh, he came in late. Nice.
But better
That's,
late than not come. But anyway, yeah, you can watch
Yeah, I went to
replay.
India. That was an amazing, what a fun trip that was to northern India.
India. Wow.
Got to know the Sikhs quite a bit, the Sikh religion, and just their lands. And yeah, it was quite an adventure there for sure.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. And do you have a YouTube channel?
I do.
Eric?
It's filmcartel.org, but I'd point people to Vimeo. Just search my name on Vimeo. That'll
No,
get you the.
I mean YouTube channel.
I have one, but I prefer. I think
Okay.
Vimeo has better quality work of mine on it than the YouTube channel does.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
YouTube channel is filmcartel.org, and but Vimeo has the more current, better, interesting stuff on it.
Oh, okay. All right. So I'll put it in the chat. Yeah. And I just want to say before we do the rapid fire, and my name is Ching Juhl, and I created this program. Go. I created this program 4 years ago because the COVID lockdown, I cannot see my people and my relatives and also people who I worked with. And so today I'm still chugging on. Yeah, I'm very happy, very blessed to talk to so many people and learn from them, and yeah, to share their stories. And so please, if you like this program, please subscribe this channel, Juhl Media. And you also can see Eric. I do YouTube Shorts. If you check my YouTube Shorts, right, one of the top viewed is getting 319K viewers.
That's the viola versus fiddle.
Yeah, it's the violin.
Or violin versus.
Yeah, what's the difference between violin and viola? So
viola.
It was like,
you definitely should do a fiddle versus violin. I think you should do a take on that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, fiddle.
Yeah.
I have to go get a fiddle. Yeah. Yeah, a crappy violin. Sorry, no. Fiddle is just the same as a violin, though.
It is, but that's a funny thing in the bluegrass world. Like little people, people that are new to it will be like, "So is that a fiddle or a violin that person's playing?" And we always laugh because it's the same instrument.
Oh, yeah. No, I think when I think about fiddle, it's just the way it plays a little different.
Yeah.
The way you hold the bow.
It's a little
sound.
looser.
Yeah,
a little looser play, and
yeah.
It can be very fast though, and staccato, just like the best of the classical players.
Yeah.
But it is more improvisational too, where most violin music is written down, and where fiddle is a more not an oral tradition. Like you teach people traditional fiddle, like the Cajuns and stuff.
Right.
But it's the same instrument. It's a joke, an ongoing joke. Like Man, so you ever gonna play violin, man? You've just been playing that fiddle your whole life? Jeez, you're just gonna waste your life like that? You should really step it up and play a violin sometime.
But we sometimes call our instrument fiddle. Like I say, okay, please take my fiddle over there, So I still dress my
Are people, I bet you there's some classical people that get very upset by that.
And thank you, Mitch. You've been here all the time. Sorry.
Ugh.
I assume Mitch just got here. All right, so rapid fire. Okay, all right. So
Yeah.
rapid fire, just like a very quick question and quick answer. Okay.
Yeah.
Eric, what's your favorite color?
Dark green.
Favorite junk food?
Cheeseburger.
All-time favorite 3 movies?
Oh, 3? Wow.
Or you can say 1.
Well, Apocalypse Now is up there for sure. The Shining. And I'm going to do it. The Cove.
That's the right answer. Yeah. Have you traveled to a place you really like and you want to go back to live there for like 3 months?
Oh, I would go back to rural Japan in a second, honestly. I'd like to go to India too. Most of the places I've been, honestly, I would go back to and live for a couple months.
Any book you read recently we should know?
Yeah, Braiding Sweetgrass by Kimmerer. Unbelievable book about the, I don't know even how to just, Braiding Sweetgrass is a beautiful book. I spent some time in fire with First Nation people, especially in California, and they're very active in modern firefighting, but they also have great history in managing fire. They used to put fire on the ground thousands of years ago. So this book touches on that idea of braided wisdom, where you combine old and new. It's a very beautiful book.
When you travel long distance in your car, what music do you like to listen?
Oh man, I go all over the place. I'm doing that next week. Tuesday, I'll be on the road for a couple days heading east. So it's a mix. A lot of reggae, a lot of rock and roll. I'll definitely pop in a vintage Grateful Dead show, but I also listen to podcasts a lot too. I enjoy those as well.
Wonderful. Now, are you a organized person or are you a person leave your stuff everywhere?
Well, certain things are very organized in my life. The camera equipment is in cases where it should be. My desk goes through various pulses, but yeah, I tend to like some order, but not so much so that it's scary.
Your place looks fine right now behind you. Looks
Well,
very impressive.
yeah. There's parts you can't see, but yeah. As I like to say, currently I'm a single dude, and I have a clean kitchen and a clean bathroom, and there's dirt. It is a mountain town. It is a mountain house, so you can't avoid it this time of year, especially.
So what is your favorite food genre?
Oh man, I gotta go Asian, whether it's like Chinese or Japanese or Thai. That's my favorite, mainly because I can't really make it myself that well.
So do you cook by yourself, for yourself?
Yeah, quite a bit.
Great. Now, if you had an opportunity of talking to 3 persons, having dinner with 3 people separately, not the ones, who would you want to have dinner with?
Do they have to be alive?
Live or dead?
All right. Steve Jobs is definitely high on my list. I wouldn't mind having a conversation with my mother, who died quite a few years ago. That would be okay. And then another one would probably be Richard Branson, I'd probably say.
Richard Branson. Who is he?
He's an entrepreneur from Britain, very dyslexic like myself. I admire him. But then I would also probably add, I'd like to have dinner with Francis Ford Coppola, especially if he was cooking. So there's 4. Yeah.
Good taste. Good taste. Yeah. So if you had one last one, if you had a lot of time and money is not an issue, what kind of film would you like to make?
Oh, if money wasn't an issue, I would definitely shoot a pilot episode for my scripted series. Like if I had a couple $1 million lying around, absolutely, we would get to work. Because then I wouldn't have to listen to all these people tell me it can't be done or you should change this. Like here's the show, and they're going to be like, "Holy fuck, where has this been?" Oh, I swore again. Sorry. I was trying
Yeah,
to be good.
yeah, you're bad.
Does
Eric, you're bad.
YouTube beep those or what happens?
No, nothing.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
just
right. The FCC doesn't care about the internet.
nothing. Yeah. But anyway, yeah, Virgin Mobile. It's funny. So, yeah. Do you,
Hey, I'll give you Richard's 6 things here.
oh,
When you
what
get
else?
up in the morning, you drink a glass of water.
Okay.
Every day, you define 3 achievable tasks for the day. So those are small things, right? There's the 50-10 rule, which means for every 50 minutes at a desk working, you get up and do something else for 10 minutes that's active and not business related.
Mm.
You move and sweat daily. You express gratitude, and you reflect clearly. Or reflect daily. So you look back at your bigger thing in that one. But that's Richard Branson's stuff, man. I like him, man. He's a good dude.
Wow.
Wild, silver-haired, crazy guy who used to sell records out of his station wagon and built a huge music empire, and also does travel, right? You've heard of Virgin Air, and that's his deal. He's an interesting cat for sure.
Yeah. Lewis says a Virgin Mobile.
Yep, that was part of his business
That's
as well.
awesome.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Yeah, I'll look into that. These daily reflection. I need to do that.
Yeah, it's good.
I need to curse less. Anyway,
Well, you know, around the firehouse, there's quite a bit of language, but we have to always have kid language when there's kids around. So usually
yeah.
I'm pretty good at it. I think I only had a couple of bombs today.
Well, thank you so much, Eric.
Thank you, Ching. Appreciate
pleasure.
it. Hopefully
Yeah.
it was informative and interesting for people. I prefer not to talk about myself, rather talk
No,
about
it's wonderful.
other things. So.
No, it's wonderful. Thank you.
All
Thank you
right.
so much. Yeah.
谢
So
谢, Zaijian.
谢谢，再见. Yeah. So I want to say goodbye to everybody and thank you guys for being here with us. And thank you, Eric, again. And
You're
we're going
welcome.
to end the session, and every Friday, 5 p.m. we'll do this show. Okay. So check in next week. Oh, next week, sorry. I'm going to be with a musician. She plays 5-string viola. She's going to rock. Okay.
Nice.
All right. Bye, guys. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.